Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Torres, accompanied by the one and only Christina Nicolau. Hey, Christina, how are you?
Hi, Daniel. I'm doing very well today. How are you?
Very good. How are you surviving your power cut in your place in Athens today?
Just hoping that I have enough power in my laptop to get through this episode recording because it's a very interesting one.
It is indeed. I'm very excited to go for one of our forays outside of Europe because today we're traveling to Latin America. And on top of it, we're welcoming a dear friend of mine, Julian Saslavsky, who's the Growth Regional Manager at Whirlpool. Hey, Julian, how are you? Welcome.
Hi, Danny. Hi, Christine. Thank you for the invitation. Glad to be here.
Not at all, not at all. It was about time after meeting you already 2 years ago at Shop Talk. I don't know if it feels like more or less.
I truly don't know, has a really strange impact in people. It's like 2 years now. A lot of time for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad we finally made it. And you're based, just so the audience gets to know you personally a little bit, you're Argentinian, but based out of Monterrey, Mexico, right?
Exactly. Actually, a fun fact, I'm a Argentinian Polish guy living in Mexico.
Yeah, like the name sounds pretty, from that side of the world.
Yes. Yeah, a part of my family was from there, so I have those two nationalities. And I actually right now based on Mexico.
Fantastic. And Julian, you've done quite a few things in your career. I was going through your LinkedIn profile as, I haven't had the chance to meet you in person like Daniel. You actually started as a developer, right?
Yes. I am actually an informatic engineer. I was graduated in the UTN, a university in Argentina. And I started my career as a developer. I've been more or less, not too much, let's say 4 or 5 years, but in a really young part of my career. It was a interesting part of my life, let's say. I was really a motivated guy in terms of technology during my high school years, and I was to keep deep diving the technology, how to keep creating things and do different things, focusing on how to create, especially creating new things that wasn't existing before. So that time was childhood dreams, something like that. But I deep dive in informatic engineer. Sometime, in some point in the career, let's say in the middle, after 3 or 4 years of working as a front-end developer in B2C commerce agencies, I realized that I wasn't in the right spot for me, let's say. I realized that I love technology. I really loved it, but I love more how that enables the business. Because I found myself in a lot of with clients calls, trying to question about the task and things that I have to do and develop. And I take more time to understanding, let's say, the problem and the actual opportunity that was in the business that actually developing. So in that point, I realized that, I'm keep loving technology, but in a different perspective, right? So in that point was an interesting challenge, to move to a different perspective in my business career.
And Julian, I didn't know about you that you actually also worked in recruitment for a little bit.
Actually, as well, I take 2 years in recruitment. It was a parallel thing, being a developer and working in recruiting. I had a good time with people and having more or less connections. So I tried to take advantage of that. I will not lie.
And when did you decide? Because that's the thing about your career. It's super interesting. You have all this developing experience. You have the recruitment experience. And then you suddenly do a big change in your career, seemingly, and moving into Whirlpool, where you've been for the last 5+ years. How did that work out?
Well, as I was saying, the technology was kind of my sweet spot, but I wanted to understand how that enabled the business necessities and challenges, right? So I was trying to like, let's say, find a way of being in the middle, right? To be a translator between the business needs and the technology enables, right? So in that point, it appears an opportunity in Whirlpool to like start leading the digital product team in the South Cone of America. They were like starting more or less the digital business over there. So it was a kind of a good opportunity because was leading actually a developer team, but working inside the business team to like be the focus point, let's say more or less, of leading the initiatives, creating all the technology opportunities that the business need, and actually be more or less a translator in that team. So yeah, like that was my first move to corporate. And before that, I was always in a startup and was like super surprised about the difference between a corporate and a startup. I mean, I knew that they were different, but in that time was a really big impact.
In what sense did you find them different?
Well, I think that specific in let's say in that moment was about how they see future, let's say. Like startup has, at least the startups that I work with has really great visions about the future and about the things that we will do in next years, but all the planifications and strategies were looking in months, right? Because maybe in 3 months everything changed, or a different opportunity appears, or something managed to take the opportunity to move the direction in some other place. So startups are always in a agile, like really agile environment. So that was quite different of a corporate, right? Because they were, and when I started in corporate, they were actually seeing like years ahead, right? Like trying to create things aside of the current month or this year, or looking forward for 3, 5, 10 years in the future. And I think that what most impacted me in that time is that I realized that when I started working in corporate, I had to start thinking on how my work we will be enabled the next leader of that role. Like it was not just something to create something or for myself or for a small team. It was about to create something that endures in the time, right? Like to create something that makes a process that in some point can enable another person, another team, the successor of that role or wherever. So that create a different opportunity for me to see things in perspective, like to try to see things in a process way, like let's create a process, a system, something that can scale over time. And that makes the opportunity not only for the company and the team to grow, but as well as a professional to me, right? Because I create something that then makes me, let's say, creates the opportunity to be moved to a different role, because not everything depends on me, but I create something or I work in something that enables that business and enables the growth for me as a professional.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of influencing, I guess, across the organization on how you move forward. But you started, you said, in the digital product kind of like world of Whirlpool, but your career has grown quite a bit since then. So what were the roles that you've gone through?
Yeah, like when I started I moved like really from the technical side to go to direct to business. In that each step moved me a little bit more to the business side. So yeah, as we talked, like I was a developer, then I moved to the digital product side, and as already Danny showed up, I was really curious about different topics that were not in my current responsibility in that time. So I was really like moving, let's say, in acquiring knowledge that was not in my current scope. In that time, I was, leading the developers, talking about code, talking about big projects, but I was interested in understanding how SEO works, or how Google Ads work, or I don't know, how is an email marketing strategy. So a lot of the things that I did was train myself in that topic in my personal time. And then when I saw an opportunity in the company that no one is taking that role, or maybe we are not taking in a specific way, or there is an opportunity of improvement, I kind of put in the table hey, maybe I can do it, right? And after that, my role and my scope started to growing. And at some point, I had more things that I actually started with in the same role. And that created the opportunity for me to start moving a little bit international and actually start moving in different kind of roles that were kind of different from the digital product perspective at first.
Well, Julian, you definitely are not the typical corporate citizen. I mean, for the type of roles you've done, very entrepreneurial. You have earrings as well, which is unusual for somebody working in a corporate. When did you go international? Because I remember when we met in Las Vegas, I didn't really figure out where you were living at that point. But I think it was around the time you left Argentina, no?
Yeah, it was exactly that time. I was starting a short assignment, a project for the company that more or less it would summarize that I was a global internal consultant for the digital teams in EMEA. So I was kind of living anywhere in that time. Let's say, like, I wasn't like living in a specific spot. I have a lot of time living in Germany and another time living in UK, but bouncing around in different places in EMEA with the goal of like help and enable the opportunities that we had as a company in that time, and use and leverage my previous work and expertise to be able to accelerate some things and opportunities that happen in the digital world for the company in that region. But it was a super cool, interesting, super cool and super interesting opportunity. Like, I think even I would say that the biggest challenge wasn't respect the technicalities or the work as a whole, but it was more about the cultural adaptation that I needed for that time. Like in that project, I realized how different the work cultures are depending on the region. And the big challenge was how to address that difference in a way that the expertise and the knowledge that I could bring to the table, that I could help in the teams, could be used in a certain purpose, and be useful in that specific culture.
Yeah, I guess we've spoken with quite a few people who have lived and worked internationally, and the cultural element is what comes up more and more, both in kind of like how direct or indirect the culture is, how high context or low context the culture is, and it's always tough to adapt in order to influence, as you're saying, like to be able to bring value with the things that you can bring to the table, but in the right way. But what do you do now? Like looking at your LinkedIn profile, like you are leading growth for the region. What does this really mean?
Yeah, so after I finished my project in EMEA, I was really hyped with the idea of keep broadening my experience in cultural and international places. So it appears the opportunity to move to Mexico to start leading my current role, that is the growth team for the North Cone of Latin America. There are more or less countries as Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, like all the countries that could be below US and above Brazil, that are quite a few. And was like a different role for me as well, because that was let's say the more the closer role that I have for the business side. Looking like back in my career, that was the closer one, and actually invited me to keep broadening my knowledge, because I knew a lot of this expertise, but I knew it for my personal interest. Let's say, like I learning about that knowledge and applying in my roles as much as I can, but not formally. Let's say, like have those verticals of knowledge. So when I took this role, I will say that I learned and I'm keep learning a lot of what growth means. And I think there is a hot topic right now, at least in Latin America, from what I see so far. And it's like pushing forward my company and other companies for sure, and the market as a whole, to like think of a lot of perspective on how we tackle marketing, how we tackle like the improvement of the business, and how we see the digital transformation in places that have different level of digital penetration, let's say. But answering specific your question, like I think that right now growth have each time that I go to a conference or to a meeting with vendors or providers or agencies or even my team, when we talk about growth, we kind of say different definitions in some point. But I think that right now, the main thing that we have with the growth team is how to like like how we measure, even if it's redundant, the growth in the company. And I know that in time there are a lot of definitions as growth marketing, product growth. There are like, I would say that there are the difference that we have between the implementations of that. Personally, I don't like to match those differences because I think that in the end, that's growth, right? Like that's the definition of what a growth team is. If you see in a book definition or maybe in Google, like growth marketing will be more the discipline or the team that takes care of acquisition and maybe some part of retention, and the product growth team takes more of retention and maybe monetization. In my perspective, both are growth. It's just how and what you need as a business to grow, right? And you could create a specific growth cell that tackles, a specific challenge or a specific use of your product, of your site. They could be like, how many people enters and see a specific action in your site and how to improve it, right? And those go from the growth marketing to the product growth, and could be one vertical. Actually, not so long. I participated in a training or a course. It was called Growth Rockstars. That was super interesting, and they make the parallelism between the finance team and the growth team. Like, while the finance team is the responsible for, let's see, overseeing the inflow and outflow of money, their growth team is the responsible for the inflow and outflow of users or traffic for all our levels.
I like that concept, no? Because that's the thing, like depending on like product or marketing, you're looking for that, to get more reach, to get more, users at the end of the day. And what about like, how are you balancing in your growth role? Because it clearly goes like marketing, but it also goes into the digital area. How are you balancing brand building and performance marketing?
Well, I think that's an interesting topic and connects a lot of the comparison between the growth marketing and the product growth. Like, we compare growth marketing and product growth. In the end, maybe it's the same, and it's just it's more or less the same, and it's just the application that differs, right? Like, what are the length the way we are like seeing the challenge. But I think that in terms of brand building, is quite different from performance marketing from my perspective. Like, when you're talking about brand building, I think you're talking about how to create an emotional connection with a specific segment of people. Like, how you generate an emotional parameter that the user could use to be near the brand, and not just, let's say, use the price or the discounts to be an actual definition or a standard for making the decision to buy something or to put in place. Like, in the end, when you create or when you're trying to create a brand, you are not actually, let's say, seeing the sales number as your final KPI, right? You are focusing on something else, something much more long term. You are working on brand consideration, on top of mind, of reach, awareness. Like, you are trying to connect the user with the brand mission, vision, and that connection happens in an emotional level, right? But when you talk about performance marketing, you are more, in quotes, let's say, rational in terms of, like, you are foreseeing specific KPIs, like you are seeing ROAS, or you are seeing a ROI or sales directly, or any KPI of conversion that you are looking for, right? So that have the let's say the ecosystem to have a more short-term targets, right? Because you are wanting to see how much money would you get of X or Y investment. So what I see in this perspective is, how can we connect both worlds? Like, how can we connect the motion with a short-term and direct business metric, in quotes, and how to make performance marketing more about long-term results and storytelling. That's why I think that this topic is quite interesting. And I think one of the things that it should address is about the attribution model that we are using to measure success. Like, in an example, if we measure only, awareness or reach, we won't be able to see sales or the actual number of net sales or money that we are bringing to the table. But if as well we only measure, for example, conversions with last click, that will not tell all the story, right? Like what actually is happening through all that journey. That's why I think that now in Latin America is really a hot topic, the media mix modelings. They are trying like to show off how that results and how those investments look in the future, and how when I do an investment in some time, how that will impact in a range of time, and not actually foreseen in a specific attribution model. And I think in the end, attribution models are quite a challenging topic, especially in different companies that could have teams divided or united, because in the end, the attribution model is how we measure success, right? Like how we see success in each one of our metrics.
I love how we have a tech guy speaking about storytelling and the emotional connection, really. I mean, like, this is the ultimate reminder to all the marketeers listening who get all the pressure about the performance side of things that, it's a full funnel thing. You need to look at things through the line and understand, as you're mentioning, the different KPIs that tell the full story, not just one part of it. I was wondering, Julian, overall, in the past, let's say, in the past period in the press, we see a lot of discussions around affordability and how consumer products have become quite pricey, and it's tough for consumers to be able to make the purchase decision. But still, like at Whirlpool, you have quite high value items compared to grocery FMCGs, and you're also being able to create a more premium product proposition. So how would you go about making something like really premium for the consumer?
No, that's an interesting question for sure. Like, I think when you talk about premium products or premium segments, there is a main point to address, that is the product market fit, right? Like how you connect and you find actually the window opportunity of a demand and a necessity or opportunity of the business to be addressed. Like in the end, I think that the main difference of creating a good premium product strategy is about how quick you are in finding the product market fit. Like because if you want to understand if a user will be on board on paying more for a product, that could be the end of anything, right? Because maybe they can find that same product for a cheaper cost, for a cheaper experience or whatever. And they will not be on board of paying more with the strategy or the product that you are selling for. So I think that Whirlpool, in my perspective, in three key factors, like in a premium product strategy. One of them being the quality. Like, of course, when we talk about product, like quality must be as higher as possible. And but when I'm talking about the quality, I'm not specifically referring, let's say, on the product, because the product could be a high quality, but the user is not just buying the product; they are buying all the things that are with the product, right? Like they are buying the features, the storytelling, the design, the brand, the durability. Like all of those things talk about quality. But of course, if the product has opportunities as a whole, like that in a premium level strategy will have to be addressed. So in the end, having that quality level in a certain point is super important to create a brand position, the strategy, and use those levers to actually push forward in that strategy. If it is your product as itself, like show off the features, the durability. If it is the brand and the storytelling, show off the design, the logo, or whatever thing that you show off that quality level. So another point, I think that I would say that the major thing in these three key factors will be like actually building a community. Like it's actually what brings the long-term success of a product. And this put the pricing parameter in a different perspective, right? Because when you're selling a premium product, you are focusing on a specific segment of people to be able to acquire it. Because it brings status, joy, or whatever use the user want to put in that perspective, but makes the customer feel part of something else, a private club where they are the members. But the challenge is creating that community in the end, because I will say that the difficult part is not bringing people to the community, is that people come to the community and stay.
Yeah.
Like they don't enter and left in the same day or in a week or in a month. And that combines a lot of things.
That they engage continuously in it.
Exactly. Like they need to see that the added value in the use of the product. They need to see why they are choosing that product and why they will choose it as well in the future. Like what are the things that bring to the table? Where it concludes, I will say in the last key factor that will be the service. Like if you have the quality of the product or the brand and you have the customer already in the community, the cornerstone that combines both are the service. How you confirm that the user as a brand, how the user can confirm that as a brand, as a company, we want them here. Like we need to cherish them. We want to like try our best to make feel comfortable and avoid all the necessities that they have. And I don't know, like if you like buy something with Apple, like you know that each product connects with itself and create a big ecosystem. Or if you buy something in Amazon, you know that if you have any problem, you can like have a refund the next day. Like that's a level of service that create that level of confirmation that I want to be in the community.
I started actually smiling the moment you started talking, Julian, because you talked about product market fit, and this is so much startup talk. And I love it. Like there is not a single startup pitch where people won't ask, have you established the product market fit? And that's something that I feel like it's missed in a lot of corporations because, you know, as you mentioned, like things have been established. They've moved way past this stage and moved along. But when you are creating a new product and even more a premium product, I feel like this is a really great insight and kind of like great vocabulary for our listeners to take away, establish product market fit the way that you would do it if you were a startup.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of synergies on how the startups and corporate can like use these synergies and this concept in different ways. In the end, I see it as two faces of a same coin. You know, like in some point, startups need to like move to a more structured way in the future. You know, and the same way like corporates need the agility that the startup has. So that synergy is quite interesting on how to adapt in each one of the business levels.
Yeah, and by the way, like you're in the appliances market, and a lot of your work is online, but obviously most appliances are sold offline, and also a lot of the media where you're engaging with your consumers is offline. How are you like building like synergy between both and just this 360 type of growth agenda?
Well, you know, creating synergies between online and offline is always a fun challenge, especially when you have operation that involves like different vendors, clients, location, etc. I think a key perspective is focusing on try to be where the users want us to be. Like, and that's another reason to understand like where the user is and why they choose us. Like in the end, the cornerstone will be data. Like how are you collecting it? How are we storing? How are we connecting and using the data? Because we don't need as a business to be, let's say, everywhere in the customer relationship. Like we need to be where the user needs us to be or where the user have the pain point. Like an example, we like I know, like when we user buy us a product, maybe they just want to have a pickup available, right? And that creates a synergy between the online and offline. In a, let's say, a big ecosystem where you have real like big clients or big ecosystems as stores or as a digital site as well. And a lot of this creates the situation where you have different experiences in each one of the touch points that you have with your product. And in the end, when you're selling a brand or a product experience, you need to move in the direction in some point, like the user should have the same experience in all of the touch points, at least in the important ones. Could be in a store, or could be in the digital store, could be in a physical store, could be in the relationship with the delivery of the product, could be in relation with the payment method. Like, could they want to like pay in cash, right, or pay with a credit card? In the end, I think those are the big synergies that we need as a professionals look for in the online on offline world. Because I think in some point, like we try to do a lot of fancy projects, let's say, like something with the AR or VR that for sure are super marketable. But in the end, maybe the users just want to pay with cash, or they just want to pick up their products near his home, right? So in the end, it's not. I think that the synergies should be what the user needs, right? And listen to the user and listen on the pain points that they have should enable those synergies as a business. Because in the end, connecting the offline and online world will be in sometimes challenging, have a lot of cost. And I think the correct way or a good way to address that challenge is start where the user have the pain point. Like maybe I don't need to connect all my stores or my physical stores with my digital stores, but maybe I need to have a transversal process with the logistics to be able to address it in the same way. And that is a way maybe to connect the offline and online world without all the touch points in the same ecosystem.
And you mentioned that, of course, you need to go about using data in order to accomplish that. How do you go about it, Julian? Like in your current role, what role does data play and how do you approach it?
Well, I will not say anything new, I think, but data is like the new oil, at least in the digital world. Like I like a quote of William Thomson, like the Kelvin measurement creator, like says that if you can measure it, you can't improve it. I think that's the base of like connecting data. And in the end, a big part of leveraging data is like, as we talk, like understanding the business model and the key points that we have in a customer journey, in a funnel, in a loop, or wherever you have to understand your business needs. And actually connecting, let's say, with the product market fit, I will say that let's say that the business is a compass. Like we have our business as a compass. I will say that data is kind of what it moves the arrows. Like we have, let's say, two arrows: a business arrow and a user arrow. And when we start our business as a startup or even as a big company, we have a direction. We have like the business arrow pointing in a specific way. And after we start collecting data and we start like understanding more or less like where the user direction has, we kind of see like we have two directions. Like one direction is the business and maybe another one that goes to a different point that is the user, right? So in the end, data is what allows us to like create that scenario of opportunities, right? And then from that point, we have two options. Like we can adapt the business arrow to move in some level to the user arrow, or we keep the business arrow in the same direction and do things to move the user arrow in the direction that we want. In the end, both arrows need to move, right? And we need to like point both of them in the same direction. And I think in my perspective, that's the product market fit. And data is more or less what allows the compass to like move the arrows. But to put a much more practical use, I think that right now we are in a world that data is a lot. Like we have a lot of data going around in the market, in the business, in every spot that we want to, there is a piece of data that we can use. And I think that sometimes that data can be deceives us as a professionals, because we have so much data that we try in some point to have everything we need in our table to make a decision, right? And data is as deep as we want to go, right? So in some point, we need to like trace, the line on how much data or how much things we do need, like to take a step forward in the direction that we wanted to. I think in the end, at least what I try to do is I try to approach data from macro to micro, like start from a bigger hypothesis, wherever it is, and then with the data that I have in hand, like try to make the best conclusion that possible that I can. And after that, I will go to the next hypothesis and understand what is the data that I need to actually answer that next hypothesis and start collecting that data and answer that question to create a new one. And that creates a cycle where I go from macro to micro using the data that I have in hand, and then start collecting new data. Because a lot of things that I see is that we want to collect a lot of data, like a lot of data that maybe we don't need to make decisions, right?
Yeah.
And the first point is like, where are you going? Where are you wanted to go? Like, where are you going to go? Like, define the direction. Put the questions, and then look for the answers. And in some points, maybe like this is really connected like with CRO or growth experimentation strategies. But I think in some point, like this is maybe a personal perspective, but I think in some points you can do a well-rounded experiment, let's say. And maybe, I don't know, they want you to create a business case of something new, right? Something that wasn't there before, right? So how can I do an experiment on something that maybe is super new? I don't know what will be the impact. And then they ask you, present a business case on that. And it's like, I don't know how to present a business case. So a thing that I like to do in those scenarios is to create a proof of concept. A proof of concept that I could use to define the potential that initiative, that direction could have in the future. And that created a scenario where I have a little bit more of control on this volatile ecosystem of understanding the possible impact that a solution can have. And in the end, I have to do it in some point with at least some variables, some parameters to define how success is measured, right? Because in the end, a simple portion of data don't tell the whole story. We have to like connect all those points and actually start to make the best hypothesis possible. I think in the end, like it's tough to have let's say the reason, the clear reason and the right reason for doing a movement or a direction. I think that we are always trying to do our best hypothesis. And based on that hypothesis, we create new ones. And from that, we learn to understand if the direction was okay or we have to move it forward. But in the end, I think it's all about trial and error. And data is a key point to like enable that learnings, those learnings.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a variable of variables. That's very important in this equation. What about marketing channels? So like it's so fragmented, no? Like TV, press, retail media, out of home, influencer marketing. Like, how do you prioritize? How do you balance that?
Well, I think that connects a lot with the difference between brand building and performance marketing. Like, there are a lot of channels that in the end, how we measure a specific channel, create a scenario where we understand where to locate them. Like if we like have a influencer or TV or press campaign, in the end, we will not be able to like maybe connect it directly with a sale, right? Or maybe yes, if we have a correct like ecosystem of data, but in the end, those channels are quite a challenge to like connect with the lower funnel strategy, right? So I think the interesting part of how to balance, those channels is to understand first, like what is your short-term target, right? Like there are channels as could be a search engine or a social media that have much more direct impact on the business with the result, and you are able to measure it in some like A/B situations. So those kind of channels have the opportunity to create more short-term results and have more, in quotes, control of the direct actions that you want to do. And the channels as TV, retail media, out of home or influencers maybe are located in a more middle upper funnel section of your strategy. So in the end, you need to create a full funnel strategy, right? And I think in the end, the best way to balance is how you create audiences in each one of the stages of the funnel that create inputs for the next stage. So I could create, as an example, an upper funnel campaign in TV that creates a specific audience that I could use in a middle funnel campaign in social media, and that creates an audience that I could use in Google in the lower funnel campaign. Like in the end, that could create a full funnel strategy. I think in the end, the way you desire you balance those investments is if you measure it, right? Like if you measure that, you will understand in your segment, in your product, in your business, what are the channels that better suits your needs. Like I think there is not a golden key, let's see, to like tackle marketing. Yes, of course, our channels that have much more traffic of people and have, let's say, better opportunities to be addressed. But in the end, each product, each business is different, and each channel adapt different of the needs. So I think in the end is like try a little bit of everything and understand like what are the things that could fit your needs, and then start deeping on that strategy. And not only get deeper and deeper, but start connecting, like how a Google strategy connects with the Meta strategy, and how that connects with the Pinterest or TikTok strategy, and start like creating more or less the dots of how could it be the most used user journey that we could have in our specific business. And after we detect that, start deepen on those relationships and balance as the user tell us to do it in some point. Like if the user are looking our product in a search engine, well, we will try probably to deep dive those investment in that specific channel. So in the end, the compass should be the user, and that should more or less put the direction on where are the balances that a business we need to do.
It's a feedback loop at the end of the day, right? So you build, you measure, you learn, you adapt, and then you go ahead from the beginning. Julian, I wouldn't want to miss the opportunity, though, to get pick your mind a little bit on with regards to the region that you're operating. So we're hearing a lot of things about the growth that's going on in Latin America. Is it the same across markets? What are kind of the trends that you're seeing and observing, at least in your part of the business?
No, I think that's super interesting. Like, I think Argentina and Latin America, so sorry, is a really diverse region. Like there are too many countries, but I think that the interesting part is that each country has a different maturity level, let's say, in whatever is digital penetration, economic, the infrastructure. Like each country for sure is quite different. And we have, a Brazil that is a digital hub with a lot of expertise, with a lot of potential. Like Brazil as a whole is a unique ecosystem. Like it has, resources and results that are quite amazing as a country as a whole. And it put more or less the direction on where Latin America at some point should go as a region. But then you have more countries, I would say, like Argentina or Mexico, that has the potential to like reach that direction, right? Like Argentina maybe is a specific point because there is always economic things that go around their ecosystem. But in the end, the potential as a digital hub, as a digital consumer, is not reached his peak yet. Like the consumption that Argentina has, that Mexico has, will still grow in over time, and the digital penetration will be even higher, creating more scenarios to like invest in channels, invest in more digital projects, and that will accompany with the country results. And then you have countries that could be, I don't know, like Costa Rica, Guatemala, Panama. Like maybe Panama will not be the perfect example, but using Guatemala and Costa Rica as examples, like there are countries that don't have the same level of digital penetration. Like there are countries that have a lot of potential of growth, but maybe they are in the digital stage, maybe 5 years from this point, right? So we could see, like if we see now an Argentina or a Mexico, we are seeing how potentially Peru, Ecuador, Guatemala could be in the next 5 years. So what is cool about the Latin America ecosystem is that you could see a line. Like you could see a line of growth that each country had, and you can use that line to understand the challenges that those countries has to address them with certain part of non-volatility, let's say.
Well, there's like a type of pattern behind the countries. Are there any countries in the region, or any like one country in the region that would somehow surprise us, or has like a different dynamic, or
Well, I think that Mexico is a amazing country. Like for sure, I think that the level of infrastructure, digital penetration, and an ecosystem that Mexico has didn't reach his peak yet. And even without reaching his peak, the results are amazing. So I think probably in the next year we will see a lot of Mexico appearing more in the charts of growing, and that will be super interesting because Mexico is super well connected, geographically speaking, with US, with the rest of Latin America, its connection with both seas. So I will say that Mexico has all the parameters to be a major player in the world. So probably we will see more of this country in the next years. But yeah, I mean, like having, as you say, like that pattern in Latin America is always there. So seeing how Brazil is right now, that creates the direction for countries as Mexico, as Argentina to say, okay, Brazil had this kind of challenge, right? Maybe that kind of challenge could happen to me, right? Like how I will address it. And then maybe it happened, maybe it's not, but it creates a certain security on the directions that we are taking as a team, as a country, as a business. And I think that's super great, because when you have a large ecosystem and when you have a multi-country structure, having that line like really painted in a wall, let's say, create a scenario where you understand more or less what do you need to tackle in each country and how to move that country maturity level to the next one with the current resources, strategies, or structure that you need.
Yeah. And Julian, as a listener of the podcast, you know that this wouldn't be a regular FMCG Guys episode without our famous last question, which is especially relevant to you, I think, because of your unusual career, which is if you were going to go back to when you started working, what would be that one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Well, when I would say that piece of advice would be to embrace duality. When I was young, I was a little bit like stressed with this movement in my professional career, because I was really tech and then start moving to business. And in some point, I feel that I was like stuck in the middle. I wasn't like full business, but I wasn't full technical, and that created like a situation that was a little bit afraid of not being a specialist on certain area, right? So when I was young, like that created a lot of situations where I wasn't confident enough with my professional decisions, because I wasn't sure if that will open doors in the future. And now with the results and things that have happened so far in my career, I realized that duality is what opened the door so far, like how to actually connect both worlds and be that translator that the business need. And I think that my personal advice for me will be like to keep embracing that duality and don't be afraid of what defines me, because I think that in the end, if I'm not being myself, I will be in places that I don't want to be, right? So I think that will be an advice for me if I talk with my younger self.
This was Julian Saslavsky, Regional Growth Manager LATAM at Whirlpool. Christina, what are your takeaways?
What an interesting profile, first of all, Daniel. Someone who has started as a developer and now finds himself leading like growth in a region in big CPGs.
And he was a recruiter like me for a while.
Even a recruiter like you, like a very diverse profile, which is always makes a good conversation. I loved how he mentioned like the differences between the startups where he used to work and now in corporate, and how yes, like overall startups do have like this vision, but their operations are more on the months, and they try to be very agile and pivot where it's needed. While on corporate side, he felt like corporations look years ahead, and now his one is more to enable the next generation of leaders. I found this quite a romantic and very positive outlook.
And very different to what people normally tell you about the difference between a startup and a corporate. Like he literally said, the difference between a startup and a corporate is that they have a different way to look at the future.
Yes, and that's really about where you stand looking from the outside in, right?
To be pretty smart to arrive to that conclusion, I have to say.
Indeed. We can definitely give him that. And I love how we had the conversation about marketing with such a technical profile, right? And you can clearly see that for leaders, there is a distinct role which is very much needed from the brand building side and the storytelling. And I know that we have had these tendencies, and that's an ongoing discussion in this podcast on like performance marketing taking over. And we need to be very rational, and we need to measure conversions all the time and have the KPIs. But there is a point to say about the emotional connection that you have with your consumers and what is kind of the longer term relationship that you are building. So I found this point brilliant.
Mm-hmm. He also had a very interesting way of approaching data.
Yes, he did. And again, coming from a guy who really understands data and how they work, he mentioned again that, first of all, data can deceive us. And that's, again, a pattern, I would say, that we can spot with our guests, that we have a lot of data, we can go into a lot of details, but this can lead us astray. So we need to make sure not to overdo it with the analysis. But I also loved the approach that he had on when you have something new and you don't have data, you just create a proof of concept, try it out, learn from it, and then you can figure out where you go next.
Yeah. And I think that what Julian has is that, now that I'm thinking about it, is that within his creative mindset, his growth mindset, he is a guy that knows how to see a lot of patterns. And as we're talking about like the role of data, also like comparing a startup and a corporate and performance and brand building. I also, even when he was looking at LATAM, he talked about different countries being at different stages, but he ultimately said that there's an evolution line, and you can understand the challenge in every market by looking at the underlying pattern of evolution, which I thought normally people would say, oh yeah, this country is like this and like that. But he puts it in a very systematic way, which I thought was fascinating.
Very systematic, and it's really about taking that step back and trying to see the bigger picture. And then you can put like the different countries in the different parts of the journey, and you can understand what are the root causes of different changes that are happening. It's like reading through a book of history, right? Understanding what is the cause and the effect, and then kind of like predicting it in a way so that you can take better proactive decisions earlier. And there is another part that kind of like stuck with me. He's really good at painting mental images in a way. When he talked about the business as a compass, and he was mentioning that essentially data is there to help you move the arrows so that you point your compass in the right way and you find your orientation essentially. And I guess like this is also when it comes to the big picture of LATAM, that's kind of like what he's doing, right? Looking at those patterns and understanding what's the direction that a country or a product or on any level is taking.
Fantastic. Well, great takeaways as always, Christina. I think that you're someone that also can read the patterns and take them back to all the conversations. Thanks for what do I do well? Do I do anything well in this podcast?
Now you're making me. You'll have to cut this.
Well, we'll leave the audience to decide. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG, guys.